Okay, so the first question, let's put it easy. What can you, but what are your reflections about this STS and art and design collaboration? What are your feelings, your reflections about these connections? Because I know all of you have done quite a lot of work on that area. So, for example, would you?
Sure.
There's a mic. We will have to share it.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for this incredibly stimulating presentations. So normally, in responding to that question, I would rattle off a bunch of pre-formulated thoughts. But actually, these presentations provoked, maybe just shifted a little bit my way of thinking about this. So I think I'll stick to my immediate impressions. So one of the things that came out to me most overtly throughout these sessions was this kind of ongoing tension between utility and playfulness, and a kind of imperative which sometimes comes from STS or STS scholars to kind of make it clear, why is it that we're paying attention to art and design methods? And the kind of embrace of that demand by some artists and designers, and also a kind of rejection or resistance to that demand. And on the other side, a way that STS scholars often dabble or sort of jump into the arts and design practices, into drawing and sketching and dressing up, which is something I also love to do, as a way of kind of escaping from the conventional thought forms and activities that were, our usual schedule of production of our schedule of intellectual production. But what came out to me today was that, in a way, that dialectic is familiar and both productive and annoying. But I was thinking today, no, there's something else going on here. And it's almost like an element of trickery. It's a dance between these methods and what we say about them, what we say on funding applications in order to support using these kinds of methods, and what we're actually doing in the course of engaging across the arts and the sciences, or reading each other's practices. And actually, maybe this just came out to me most overtly in the invitation to participate in this session, the vermouth session, which I got an invitation. I thought, oh, that sounds wonderful, but what vermouth, what? And I assumed that it was like pechacucha, a kind of word that came from somewhere, and a vermouth session, that must mean discussion. So I was immensely shocked to actually be served vermouth just at the point where I'd also gotten my first cup of coffee of the day. And I thought, in a way, this embodies perfectly something that happens in the most productive encounters between the arts, the sciences, and kind of STS scholarship that will indulge in a kind of relentless exercise of critique. But the really valuable moments are when we get sort of thrown out of familiar tracks or comfort zone, and then re-delivered to the same place, but with a different view of the matter.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, and also thank you for all the Pechacucha speakers. But I think it was very, very interesting to think about what I'm trying to do with most of the people around here. And I think, I don't know if you have something to say about STS art in design as like big thing. But what I was thinking today, because my background is in anthropology and I'm coming from South America. So when we study anthropology, it's not only social anthropology, but it's also archaeology and biology. So I'm very close to science, more close to design and art. And because I'm an early career scholar, also I'm going to any conference around. And I have been in 3 different conferences this month in participatory design, European anthropology, and international sociology. And then I have in this moment in my mind 3 things that were like guiding all these conferences. First, the failure of participation, how participation is a must, but something that is totally impossible to encounter as a concept in the research, in the actual process of research. Second, something that Nina was enlightening us and is connected with safety. And for me, safety in the case of the STS, the relationship between STS, art, and design is connected with dogma, or what I feel most of the time that I work with designers or engineers, because I'm researching in process of design, Internet of Things, is something they are looking for when talk with me, like we need you solving us through your methods, like kind of, magical und. Your methods has to come to us to put things in order, to place things in a way that first, because we need to talk with institutions, we need to become important, and then we need to validate us. So third thing is, something that is what I'm afraid of, which is that taking STS as a kind of solution, or kind of, like this whole framework to solve, and that could be I haven't seen how it's bringing a kind of analytical suffocation. So, and then these three things are, around my mind now. I have no solution. I mean, I'm thinking loudly, and then coming from a ethnographic practice, how can I deal or negotiate between these things when you go to do research? Because if I know something that is not safety, dogmatic, or or clean, analytically clean, is ethnography. I mean, and any method in sociology, anthropology, or social science that I know could bring, light to or order or something. So I'm getting the what Nina asked, how we can, be. No, I don't know if you ask if you can be innovative, but if innovation becomes a thing to do, maybe we need to start to not think about STS art of design, but think the actual process that we are involved together, and we are researching for what? I mean, why research? Why researching in the connection between STS or science with design? Why these three things has to be together? What we are trying to do, or what we can do with that? And I think my thinking is around that, not the connection between, but why we have to connect and what we can do, which I think is very basic, but we are not addressing.
I'll try and follow on from that if I can. I also want to thank the speakers. I really enjoyed all of the presentations. I kind of wrote a number of sort of preoccupations that I think that I detected during all of the presentations, or most of them. And I'll sort of pick out three maybe, so I don't speak for too long. And the first is something that Ignacio mentioned, and luckily he's not here, so I can have a bit of a go at him, and we're friends, so it's okay. But he mentioned this term sort of epistemic work, which I think is probably going to come up a lot in the next 3 or 4 days. It's certainly a preoccupation of a lot of STS studies. But it made me wonder whether or not what we're seeing here in terms of these collaborations is something that we can do justice to or characterize as epistemic work, whether it's it's our research subjects, is what they're doing, or it's what we're doing. And that also makes me think that in a sort of Stengerian kind of way, that there's something else more important going on here, maybe, that we're not, or that we might think about beyond the epistemic, or if we bracket out the epistemic. I'm not sure, for example, if designers or artists would particularly like their work to be characterized as epistemic. Ontological might capture it. It might not either. But it seems to me that there's other things going on here, both in the practices of those who we study and also in our own practices. I also want to sort of pick up on something that I think Nina is touching upon with her work and the way she narrates her work. I think it's also something that I came across with Rancière and his sort of criticisms of critical art, and this problem of being critical. And Latour talks about this in terms of sort of, showing people the kind of the ideologies at play within capitalism, et cetera, and, showing work to publics to inform them, et cetera, about these terrible processes, et cetera. And Rancière reminds as well, mostly the people that are repressed by such processes know more than, the critical artists, for example, that are doing that work. I think what's interesting about what Nina's doing in a way is that she's kind of telling us that feminist STS may provide a different grasp onto these type of processes or what the work is doing, rather than kind of doing the old, and to sort of borrow a phrase from Nina, sort of heroic forms of critical art, that we might think of it in another way. So it may be thought through feminist STS or constructivist thought. And it also then brings me on to a third point, which I think Nina also kind of is touched upon, and Michael Guggenheim touched upon, and others, which is invention, the question of invention rather than innovation, and inventive methods. And what do we do with these practices that we're doing? Do we turn them into methods? And my sense is I get nervous at this point, because for me then they become recipes. And once they become recipes, we know what we're going to get out of them. We know that this method is going to produce a certain type of epistemic work, certain detections of ontological entities, et cetera, et cetera. So how can we kind of allow invention without necessarily it becoming methodologized? I can't really say that word, sorry. Maybe there's a Catalan word for that. But I think those are my 3 points.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much for inviting me here to be a discussant. It feels like a real hero position, which I'm going to try and not take by trying to ask more questions than give more summaries. But first of all, to say, wow, all the discussants, you're all trying to do so much. And the word excess kept coming back to me from Nina's talk. Overall, trying to summarize, and I try to do my methods of post-its, and they're not sticking and all the kind of things. Anyway, if we spend so much time concerned with art, design, STS, boundary making, then do we go far enough into our or our investigations and increase invisibility and not really show as much difficulty, mess, and the issues that we have? So for me, all the questions I have are questions about practice and the mobility of our skills, our thinking, our doing, by working together. But we're all still making certain things visible and invisible. So these are my questions. And I have to say, normally I'm kind of very cheery, discussant panel person, but I think it might have been a sangria and got a bit grumpy. But Bernie, I want you to be accountable for the words that you used: sabotage, hack, cheery, cut, insert. You throw some methods away, but you keep some. But you seem to have kept categories of soft violence as a meta-haven, and I wonder for whom and why. Michael Guggenheim, how do you know when your practice of methods is enough? And I kind of really felt synesthesia and dissonance in this work. And I started to ask myself, can we feel full, in terms of a meal, can we feel full about catastrophe, which is a dissonance because it makes you taste that lack or that impartiality of catastrophe, disaster. I had some disagreements with Susanna. Sorry, I'm getting grumpier. Why make, you said, and you kind of warranted going back to craft, but I'm not sure we need to go back. And do we start with theory and design? I'm certainly not so sure. Ignacio, who's not here, so I can get grumpier. Do you become a translator or a gatekeeper of STS to architecture students? What is the direction of problematizing? Although he did do it, so I'm being less grumpy, because he's your friend. architecture challenged STS, but his job title, STS challenged architecture. So he kind of did both. Okay, so it's the friend bit. Okay, more grumpiness. Joanna, how far and what matters? Who is it for? Is it enough to highlight CO2 for a corporation and not account for the CO2 of the meta-generative algorithm of the artwork? This is pre-Sangria, by the way. I'm wondering if you could hold to account your own reflexive question and just do a little bit more turning in your thinking about what you're trying to highlight by using yet another generative algorithm and method. Okay, I can keep going or I can stop, but I have more and more and more areas. Okay, I'll be really fast. Okay, Liliana encouraged playfulness about energy, but similar to Joanna, it encouraged the use of very sophisticated materials. Granted, I thought, okay, it's going to be a single, wonderful, final, desirable object, but then it got caught up in making 30. So I wanted an account of the materiality and the materials and the thought and the reflexivity of energy on that one. Tim Chori. Okay. I feel like I'm now back at school or something. I'm enjoying this. How is breath being drawn between art, design, and STS, which for ease of breath is alphabetical in its ordering? You started to scope out the question, but I'm not sure whether you answered it, but you answered it with a method. How are the medical costs of making visualized? I wanted to know more. Okay. Oh no, now I get down to my friends. Okay. Enrique, I had a question about stability. When is material stable enough to share and make public? I kept thinking this all the way through with your post-it notes. Mine are losing their stickiness. Irene, projects go back, they're taken away. But how do you replenish in transdisciplinarity and in participation? There was a lot of giving in that project, but I was constantly wondering about replenishment of all of this doing too much or doing so much. Kat, Bud. How can we learn from existing garments by and for women? How do we become mobile? I felt like you answered the for whom that I asked in so many other of the papers, but I wanted to know so much more about the office, the studio, and the archive, and the mobility between those, or not. Nina. Guru. Okay, question. If sociology does not always make better art, are you asking us in some way to perform embarrassment and think about excess, to do art and STS without heroism or fetishization? Is this a protest or a manifesto or a manifest? Sorry. More questions. Anyway, I've got to the end of my post-it, and I feel less grumpy now.
Well, no, that's an example of STS in the making. You know, just by asking questions as a tool for making happen, to make it happen, not to as a tool. No, it's not. We're talking about not methodolizing what you were saying, not being methodolizing, but that's a way of being in the making. The question as something that leads towards this path of making. No, so I guess there are a lot of questions over there. No, so I don't know if some of you want to say something back or want to. No, but just a way as a way to. Okay. No, okay. So this is we have shown like a tension between the reflective epistemology and methodology to take account of that, and also the questions that brings into this path, and the questions that puts you into the mood, let's say, towards this path. No, so but it's true that it's let's say background. It's background that everybody said, no, I'm not an artist, I'm not a designer, but I'm a sociologist, or I'm at whatever. No, so everybody's in the middle of these different situations, but with a background. Let's say that it's there. No, and I think in many cases the background is there interfering, and making able those questions to be answered in some way or another. No, so I guess that's why we need this reflective moment on epistemology and methodology to get rid of all these constraints that are there, no, and that doesn't allow you to think that, no. So I guess it's how can we reflect on that without getting trapped into this scenario, no, without being methodolized, no. I guess that the questions are good things, no. Questions make you questions, and it brings you another point of view that might bring you another point of view from where you can start thinking another thing, no. So it's like to practice is like consultancy, an STS consultancy thing, no, like that. No? But I guess there might be some hints to you talked about inventive methods as a way to to put into the situation of where this collapse could happen as a natural. Right? Ignacio talked about these idiotic epistemic practices or spaces of idiocy where you could also let into these things. I'm just wondering about that, about what you think. If someone in the public that wants to say something about that, or can bring something also into that, or all of you. No questions. No questions. Well, it's time. It's two. Okay. Yeah, it's two. Well, I think it's two, and we are all hungry also, and we also need to get to the conference, no? So we need to have lunch. So maybe it's time to leave it here, and maybe we will be able to have some questions, and after things. There also Paul Valder did a written summary. Let's see how it ends with all the ideas that came out from this session, and also Mario made a graphic summary that are you going to show something now or later on? Maybe later on. He will put it online. We will put it online. No? So now what we're going to do is like to do this textual, this written summary and this graphical summary, and also this video summary, and try to summarize everything and to put it online to make it available in order to keep on thinking about what could foster this relationship between STS and art and design, but also taking into account that what we do, one is to research on art and design, and as another by other means, as we stated, and also so. Thanks a lot for all of you for being here. Thanks a lot for your presence and your contribution. Now it's just the starting point, because after that we are going to the conference. Some of you might go, and others just get back to the work in Barcelona. But anyway, we just wanted to put into account some of the topics, some of the ideas that are dealing with this STS and art and design, and see what it comes from that, and say okay. So thanks a lot, and have fun.